Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to the panelists, thank you for being here and providing some insight. It really is appreciated. And I can relate to a lot of the dialogue here today. Mr. Chairman, we're discussing, again, a situation where the Bureau of Land Management has decided to not listen to constituents. And that's the case when it comes to our federal lands and now, and as well as our tribal lands. And that's a topic that I've raised with Ms. Culver before, with other officials within BLM. We know that all too well in my home state of Idaho. We've got 12 million acres of BLM managed lands. And not only are the issues with BLM present here, but they will be soon exacerbated with this new BLM public land rule that is underway. And President Nygren, in your written testimony, you mentioned the BLM's withdrawal of approximately 336,000 acres of federal land in the Chaco Culture National Park. You noted that the objections of the Navajo Nation were ignored. And I've got that same kind of situation in my state, my home state of Idaho, when the BLM would not hold public hearings on this public land rule that I referenced. And I believe that's happened in other regions as well. I'm going to ask you, President Nygren, and also try to get Ms. Ashland's input on this. But first of all, do you feel like the Navajo Nation has been heard on this? And I think I know the answer, but the second part of this question, and what I'm going to also ask of Ms. Ashland, is on this withdrawal regarding the resources. How much wealth are we talking about here? Can you quantify that in any way? First of all, we are heard. Secondly, can you quantify the wealth of the resources that are part of this withdrawal?
Thank you, Congressman, for asking that question. As mentioned earlier, as president of the Navajo Nation, the voice of the Navajo people and the Navajo Nation Council, the legislative body, united behind this effort, opposing the 10-mile buffer zone. No, we weren't heard. Hearing it on the news firsthand as the president of the Navajo Nation is obviously you're not being heard. As mentioned earlier, it's a tough scenario to where you feel like you are representing the poorest of the poor, and when you're trying to bring people out of poverty, trying to provide them opportunities, if you're going to take a job from somebody or money from somebody, you should have a plan to replace it. And in this case, that plan wasn't provided, which to me is very disrespectful. And at the same time, one of the things that we forget to think about is Chaco is surrounded by the Navajo Nation. And the Navajo Nation has been protecting Chaco for hundreds of years. Chaco would not be where it is today if Navajo people didn't live there, didn't protect that, didn't have ceremonies, didn't honor it. So for people to question how we feel about Chaco is very disrespectful to us. We've been doing it for hundreds of years, and as I mentioned in my testimony, and into the future and forever, we will continue to protect Chaco because Chaco sits within the boundaries of the Navajo Nation. And then the only part was you're taking money from poor people. So how do you replace that opportunity? So I know.
You're saying there's the cultural wealth, but there's also the natural resource wealth. Mm-hmm. And any quantification on the natural, I understand the cultural piece, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. The natural resource piece, you have any input on what's there?
I think Mrs. Ashland, she mentioned that in her testimony. So
okay, Ms. Ashland, with your expertise as a consultant, perhaps you can add some light to that?
Yes, Enduring has calculated that if 233 Mancos wells were drilled, over 86 million barrels of oil and 25.85 BCF of natural gas could be produced. 19% of that would be Navajo. The remaining would be mostly federal. Based on a royalty rate of 16.66%, the combined royalties foregone by just the federal government and the allottees would be $51,122,997 per year, for a total of over $1 billion for the 20-year withdrawal. The foregone royalties for the Navajo allottees tracts alone would be $194,267,390 over the 20-year withdrawal.
Thank you for that, Ms. Ashland. And Mr. President, This is a property rights issue that we're dealing with. And Ms. Culver, I've communicated with you before, and I want to thank you for being here. This hasn't been pleasant for you, and I hope you get some bonus pay for showing up in the place of your director, because your director should be here. But at least you're showing up. I hope that in some way, with one of these hearings, you're at least getting the message, we are not being heard. So I'm saying that directly again, with you directly, and on the record, we're not being heard. We're going to do everything we can here to try to set things right with this committee. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.